Hey everybody, it's Jim of Animateducated. Today we're going to see an interview with Renee Patin Farrington, who is the daughter of Ray Patin, who was an animator at Disney's back in the 1940s. And he went on and got his own career in animation, did a lot of TV commercials, things like that. And in this episode, you're going to get to see a rare pencil test from Sea Scouts, a Donald Duck cartoon. You're also going to see some historical footage that her dad shot when he was at Disney during the 1940 Disney strike, and a lot more. Also, I have a really bad cold at the time of this recording, so yeah, you'll see what I'm talking about.
So Renee, you've grown up in Burbank and you wrote this book about Burbank. Can you tell us how did you start? How did you begin this idea of writing this book?
Well, I found all these archives that my father had amassed over many years, back to the 20s, and found them fascinating. I learned more about my father and about animation and all of that through writing the book. Learned a lot about me too. And so what I did was to write it from pictures. And so there are 1,000 pictures in it, like 400 I needed permission for. There took 2 years from Walt Disney Company to get permission for the pictures that I have, many of which were taken by my father or created by my father or of my father. So it turned out that I was fascinated by it, and a few other people were, and it turned into a quite a project, a 12-year project.
How did you keep doing? Did you do it every day or on weekends, or how did that happen?
Well, I joined a writing group, and I would read a chapter each time. And the first time I got a laugh, I figured out what my tone would be. So it reflects my father's sense of humor, which is sort of his main characteristic. And it really sort of started speaking to me about the theme of learning to look at life through the point of view of humor and also wonder, and realizing that that was the point of view of the Walt Disney Company. And of course, I saw the Walt Disney Company through different eyes, particularly during the strike, than many people might. But the conclusion of the book, which is about feeling all through life that, oh, just Disney, the big studios are over the hill. And I lived in Burbank, which was on the other side of the hill from the Hollywood sign. And the Hollywood sign faced all that glitz and glamour. But in Burbank, where we just had Disney and Warner Brothers, and a few other things, I thought we were second class. So the whole story had to do with realizing that all through my life, I was lucky enough to be able to have that sense of wonder, those lights inside me, which is what Walt had and what my father had, and which I think something that most animators have, particularly in other artists. So that's kind of where it took me. And to tell that story, it took 48 chapters and 1,000 pictures, and there are 400 of them needed permission. Like the Hollywood sign is owned by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. And so, and I have several pictures of the sign. So that would take time and money. And so that was 400 of those. So there's 20 pages of credits in the back of the book. So it just sort of took on a life of its own.
You grew up in Burbank, and I've only been here since 2000, but you grew up here. So has it changed a lot?
You came to my talk, that's called To Burbank with Love, talking about the changes. And I went around town and took pictures at different venues. The neighborhood where I grew up, which was called Riverside Ranchos, I lived about 3 blocks from the Disney studio. I could see the water tower from my house, and I still can. And that neighborhood feels about the same. But what Johnny Carson used to kid about was beautiful downtown Burbank, and there was barely any downtown Burbank when he kidded. And NBC, as you know, is not in what we call downtown. It's right across the street from Disney's in our old neighborhood. So in going back the several times that I've gone to speak for different things, I went back to speak to Cal Arts, and then I belong to a Disney Historical Society called the Hyperion Historical Alliance. And as you know, the Hyperion Studio was the first. By the way, they're going to have their 100-year anniversaries in 2023. And so is the Hollywood sign going to have its 100th anniversary. So downtown Burbank is now big time. I mean, it has parking problems. It's a real city, and people like you and other important people live in Burbank, and it's not second class at all. There's more production done in Burbank than there is certainly in Hollywood, which never had that much production. The studios were scattered all over the place. The studio, of course, that I used to visit with my father and that he would work in is all still there. But of course, the whole new arrangement of building the headquarters and all of that has been built around it. And then across the street, where what we call the new animation building, which is no longer the newest animation building, but the Roy E. Disney animation building, is where I used to play. There's a pond there, and so the whole Disney area, and then of course across the street, which is the whole hospital complex, is the area where when they went on the strike in 1941, where they would do all their organization and actually had a whole welfare system. And my father documented in 8mm, which I've transcribed now, the whole 5-week Disney strike, all of the aspects of it. And my father did tons of 8mm footage, and he would make these openings. And this is when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about the fact that he's sort of like welcoming his own kid.
Yeah.
And so it's a joke. And he is showing my mother in this old cartoony car as if she was driven by a chauffeur who's left. And there's my father who's coming to open up the door. And he picks up what looks like a towel, and it's me. So I'm really lucky to be able to see my own homecoming. From Disney, that's Thumper. And my best friend was Pluto. He wouldn't talk back when I would talk to him. So all through my childhood, my father always had this. This is the Hyperion Studio, which was about 10 minutes from where I was born. And here are some of the cartoonists, some of the animators at the Hyperion Studio having a contest drawing the evil queen. And this guy is really, really proud of his footage, and he is showing it to his friends. This is all shot at the Hyperion Studio, which Roy and Walt started in 1923. So there he is showing his footage, all proud of it. There's a model sheet in the background, which they use to work on. You can also see a time sheet to the left that they
This is interesting for us animation people, because anybody knows this guy was Disney animated director and one of the 9 old men.
Tried to have the Hyperion guys identify them, and I think they did get Wolfgang. I'm not sure they got this guy.
Yeah.
And so this is the end of it when his footage, the other Wolfgang didn't think his footage was that good, so he trashes it. And then in the next scene, my father is animating Donald Duck, which was his specialty. This is the model sheet for Donald Duck, and this is my father. some of the animators said that their eyes, one of our best friends was blind at the end because of that light that was always coming up at them through the window there. So he's working on Donald, and this will be rough footage for the Sea Scouts, which was published. This is his fellow. I'm not sure what's on that model sheet behind him. Now, my father is showing on a moviola his footage. He's so proud of it. Overacting, of course. He creates all these scenarios. This guy thinks it's so bad he has to hold his nose.
Uh-huh.
Guy has to put a clip on his nose. He thinks it's so terrible. So my father also is very disappointed. And then this is what is called a pencil test of some of his footage that he did for the Sea Scouts.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what pencil tests are now because we don't do them the same way as we used to, but we still do them, just a different way.
Well, you were talking about 2D versus 3D and actually using digital. And for me, since I knew from a very early age how animation was done, I really enjoy finding the new sort of innovations in animation because now they're magic. I don't know how they're done, but I agree that there can be artistry done in both ways, the old ways and the new ways. This is the celebration that Walt put on, like a huge picnic to celebrate the end of making Snow White. And it was held at this resort out east of Los Angeles. And so my father recorded that.
This footage of this little guy and this huge woman.
This is Kay Sumner she started the Tip Toppers Club, which she's 6'2".
Hmm.
She was in the ink and paint department, and this dance is on top of the ink and paint department. And it's, they jitterbug. My father sort of spliced it into the footage about the field day. So this is pretty long.
Yeah.
Particular thing. So this little band, you can't see him right now, but Ward Kimball, who was one of the top Disney animators, the creator of Jiminy Cricket and a family friend, he had the was playing in that band. He had the Firehouse 5+2. This is a yacht trip to Catalina with Disney animators and ink and paint. And once again, this is a little scenario with Kay Sumner playing with her little motion picture, 8mm motion picture camera. This is at Catalina, and they have a little story about arriving and ordering drinks. And these animators, I think that some of the Hyperion people identified them. I don't remember who they were, but my mother is the one with the red headband. So they order the drinks. Drinks all come. And this is at Catalina, not at Avalon, but at the Isthmus, where they have the set of Mutiny on the Bounty. So this place is called Christian's Hut, left over from the set of Mutiny on the Bounty. And this would probably be about 1939 or so. So they paid for it with shells, which the waiter pretty happy. So that was now this is a strike. It's a 20-minute film. These are just excerpts. It starts with a letter that my father wrote to Walt, talking about the reasons they're on strike. Of course, primarily they wanted to join the Screen Cartoonists Guild. They also wanted more recognition, and they wanted more pay because Walt Disney was becoming so well known, particularly after Snow White. They were hiring animators from across the country that really would work for so little pay that people who had families found it difficult. This entry to the studio still exists. It's not the main entry anymore, but here they are with their very creative strike posters. And if people took a time, they could read some of them. Like, it's not cricket to pass a picket. In other words, for the cabs that are going by, they want the Green Cartoonist Guild is AFL-CIO. It's now I believe, the Animation Guild. And the woman in white with the sweater in the middle is my mother. The one in the dark in front of her is Susan Jones, Voles Jones's wife. I've been goofy too long. That had been the dramatic scene that my father did in the street there. This is Buena Vista, and this goes by the old entry. Of course, Buena Vista used in many Disney productions. This is an animated strike poster, and these are all the posters lined up. You can see how creative they were. I talked to Joanna Miller, who is Walt's granddaughter, and apologized for the way her grandfather is portrayed in some of these. And she said, we understood. There he is, a caricature there. And that was done for the Reluctant Dragon, which had come out at the same time as the strike. This is Robert Benchley, who had gone through the studio, looking around the studio, trying to find Walt to convince him to do a cartoon of the Reluctant Dragon. And so they took this strike poster that you just saw, and you'll see in a minute that they took it to the premiere of the Reluctant Dragon, which Robert Benchley came to, and they animated it. There's another caricature of Walt. So this is the strike poster that they took to the premiere, and my father has footage of that premiere also. We even had a nursery school. They had all the things to help. That's me topless on the right there during the strike. This was all in that grove across the street. Now, this is the end of the strike. This is visiting Ward Kimball's house. He and Walt had trains in their backyard that inspired the train that goes around Disneyland. But Ward's was full size. It was a steam engine that went about 500 feet. And so that's Ward Kimball, who was one of the 9 old men and creator of Jiminy Cricket and one of Walt's top animators. And that's me. I'm now older, probably about 6, and riding on the train. So that's the end of the footage that I brought to that. It's on my website that you mentioned.
Yeah. I really like the photograph of your dad, making his studio and then adding his group of friends, but then putting them in different places and make it look like there's 200 people that work for him.
That was his tiny staff, and he shot it in front of his studio 3 or 4 times, and then he did a panorama so it looked as if it was a great big studio.
I want to thank you, Renee, for coming on Animateducated and telling us about the book and give us an idea what it is. You can check out her book in the links below, and get it. It's a very interesting read. I think you'll like it.
Thank you. It's nice to know that the whole spirit of Burbank lives on, Jim. I'm glad that you're holding down the fort.
Thank you. It's been a long responsibility, but I'm really glad that it's good to hear that.
So anyway, I want to thank Renee Patin Farrington for dealing with my cold at the time, the interview. I thought it went really well. She seemed to enjoy it. I kind of didn't know what to say at the end there. My brain wasn't working at the time, but I want to really thank her for coming on and giving this interview. So this is what Animateducated looked like in 2022, but this is what it's going to look like in 2023. Whoa. Wow. It's very, very nice and clear here. Wow. Okay, well, I don't have anything else, but we'll see you next year. We'll see you in 2023. You can press that button right there to subscribe. You can take a look at these videos here. And we'll see you next time on Animated Educated.